I think we'll get started, everybody. I'm Tony Thomas. I'm one of the committee members that plans the meetings. I think I know we'll see you here today. We have Diane Rackowski who's going to talk about Google Apps script flights. Next month, we're going to cover Drupal migrations. It's a hot topic for a lot of us in the room. But for now, I'll hand over to Diane.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out here today. I was really expecting to get 2 or 3 people. Anyway, just all right. So today we'll talk about Google Apps Script and specifically using it in Google Forms and Google Sheets. And let's see, I also have my laptop as a retina display, so things may look a little weird, but okay. So basically, this is from the Google website. This information. So I don't want to lose my degree by plagiarizing. So I just put it here. But basically, what is Google Apps Script? It's a JavaScript cloud scripting language. In other words, it's kind of like JavaScript, but it's in the cloud. So you wouldn't do it on your desktop. You actually do it. You like you create Google Docs on the cloud. And so when you're done with them, log in at home, you still have that Google script that's up there in the cloud. And it provides easy ways to automate tasks across Google products and third-party services and build web applications. And so you can make custom menus in your Google spreadsheets, which I don't really want to do that, but you can. You can make dialogues and sidebars. You can create custom functions for your Google Sheets. So in other words, you know how Google Sheets have different functions that add things on. If all those functions available are enough that you can create new functions. And web apps, which are really like with widgets and stuff, and interact with Google services. But mostly what I found, there's this wealth of things that you can do. It's kind of hard to get into it to figure out. So what I found was for me is to use it with Google Forms and Google Sheets. And that's what we're doing today. And so why might you want to use Google Apps Script? Well, you have people that are creating an exam and they really want to have it on a server somewhere and collect everybody's information and validate it, but they want to deliver it next week. You really don't have time to talk to a developer and set up a database and all that stuff. So let's leverage Google because you can get that X500 authentication automatically, validate the forms for you, and it'll store all your data up in that Google server cloud, so you don't have to worry about it. So we need something fast and simple, or something that's going to change next week. Why talk to a developer? Use Google Forms. It's kind of an education. And how do you find Google Apps Script? That's like the first thing. Well, you can go to Google Drive and create it, or you can go to script.google.com. Okay, so now I'm going to see how this works. And so if you go to my drive, and this is where the resolution is working so well. But ordinarily you would create something. And if you've never done it before, you won't see a script. And so you'll have to connect apps. So for your first time, if you go to create a script, you won't see it as an option. So you'll have to connect it more. And then you can access Google Apps. So then I'm going to say script. And now you'll come up with this thing. You want to create a play script, blah, blah, blah. Let's just go ahead and create a play script. So now we've got our interface for Google Apps Script. And so we've got these icons up at the top, which are pretty much saying the same thing here. You'll always need a function, my function, or whatever, to put your script inside of. And another thing I want to say, if you have any questions along the way, if I'm not making any sense, just feel free to stop me. So you have to save your project. Let's call it. And that's run, and what's going to happen. The other interesting thing, this is what I like about Google Apps Script, it's the only thing where you get to save it. Google won't save it for you. You get to choose. I won't save it now. So let's copy that. Go back to it. Let's go back to the presentation. All right, you can also just click on that link in the script that will take you to the database. Okay, so there are different types of scripts. There's like a standalone script, and you would use that to create forms or make those widgets or whatever. You use that script. But the scripts that you use to modify spreadsheets and interactive forms are called container-bound scripts. And so you'll only be able to find them from the actual Google Sheet that you're using it with. So if you create these standalone scripts, you go to Google Drive, you find those scripts that you made. If you try to find these container-bound scripts, you won't see them. That's it. You have to go to them. Okay. Here's a real world example. Language Center repair request. Okay, so we don't have access to service now, but we have like 4 classrooms and a whole lab and stuff. Things go wrong, and how do we get people to tell us about problems with the equipment? Well, we have to come up with our own repair request form. And so we've enhanced this form with Google Apps Script so that we can receive an email when the form is submitted with that form, and also we can provide feedback to users who put in the complaint function. So here's just, so this is really exciting. It's a Google form, but we're asking them, what's wrong? What's the equipment type? Where is it? Why are you reporting the problem? And like, what did you do to fix it? We don't have to ask them who they are because we don't have to authenticate them. So we automatically know who they are. So before Google Apps Script, you can create a form and you can have, say, Google, send me an email and somebody fills it out. And this is the email that you would get. LC repair request was edited recently. So I'd be at home with my phone, like, oh, there's a repair request. I don't know what it is. It's something else. I can't find the crayons. Is the server down? I don't know. And so I don't know if you ever logged into Google Sheets on your phone. So, but here's a sample email after implementing the script. Okay, we've got a new repair request. We know when. It's a computer. It's in room 110. It's PC Dell 2. We've got a short description of the problem. We know who filled it out and what they tried to do. Isn't that exciting? Exciting. At the end of this presentation, you may know how to do that too, if you pay attention. And then here's another email. So we've got this system where people tell us what's going wrong, right? But how do we let them know that we fixed something? They just make complaints. And here's what happens. When we update our Google Sheet and say what we did, whoever fills out the form and their supervisor gets this email back saying it's been resolved and this is what we did to fix it. Pretty exciting. So we don't have to go find a person and say, hey, we fixed it. And as soon as we fix it, everybody knows about it. And then I know about it too. And so here I was having fun with different percentages. You know that you can make circles and stickers. And you can. And I'm just illustrating how easy it can be to be a stick figure and be excited about being on Google Apps Script. And I don't know if you can see it, but basically you start out with your function and you can call it whatever. I just called it create repair request form. And then you have var form, and then one of the functions that, one of the classes that Google has, they have a class for forms and they have a class for sheets. So for forms, they have a function form app.create, and you can call it whatever you want. Language Center repair request. And then this rest of the stuff is basically so you can get some information about the form. I'll say var URL is form.getPublished URL. Otherwise, I won't know where that form actually is. I'll have to look through Google Drive and do that. And then I'll get the form ID. And then I'm going to create a spreadsheet that goes along with the form to gather up the information. You don't have to do that, but if I create it now, then I'll know what the spreadsheet's ID is too, and I don't have to find that later. And so basically, then there's this other stuff that you can do with the GUI. You can set to collect email to be true, or you want people to authenticate. You can set the confirmation message, so when people read at the end when they finish sending in the form, thank you for the language center repair request, description, at the beginning, you might have a description. Then this is just sort of some things that you might do. You can form.add section header, dot set title, from where, dot set help text, what is the problem with the person located. So in other words, it's really kind of intuitive. If you're adding a list item, the next thing is adding a list item, you're adding the title. So you just go through all these things and every line, okay, I'm adding one list item, I'm going to add a text item, now I'm going to add a paragraph item. So if I wanted to add another paragraph, I would just say format, paragraph item, paragraph text item again, and then I can set a different title for that, and I can set the whole text for that too. And I can also set required to be true if you want people to actually have to fill out your form. So these are sort of the things that you can do to create your own form in AppScript. You don't have to use them. And at the end, we have this log message, logger.log, and then so I'm just sending a message to myself to say this is the URL for the form, and this is the form ID and sheet ID. And so I'll show you that later. That's how you can get back, what is the form that you created. So next, please don't tell me I have to create a form using Google Apps Script in order to use Google Apps Scripts to enhance my forms. I can just hear you saying that. Well, it can be helpful to create the form using Google Apps Script, but you don't have to. You can start out with the form that you already have. So you can just sort of that. One thing you might want to create it with AppScript because say you're having a form with 10 questions and all the answers are, sometimes, maybe, never. So it's the same thing over and over again. It might be faster just to cut and paste that text over and over than just change the question rather than actually use the or the other really good reason not to use the GUI is, if you're editing your form in Google and say you add a question after number 3, if you look at your spreadsheet, that data is actually stored in the last column, which gets to be confusing. There's no way you can move your columns around. You just have to start over again and get it right. And so, with the script, you can just make it with the script is all the way you want to. And then if you screw up the script, well, you just edit your script and then just make a new form. And then you've got a spreadsheet with all kinds of table lines. So does that sort of make sense? If you also say again, so if you're editing the Google form and you add question 3 after question 2, that information is stored at the last column of the spreadsheet. Google doesn't edit the spreadsheet and make things line up. So you'll always have question 3 information being column 3. And I'll show you more of that later. Okay, so we wrote a script. Let's pretend we did. And let's see, let's escape. Let's go to our script. Okay, so I went ahead and entered this in the Google Apps Script. And so it's the create repair request. It's kind of what we were looking at earlier, except I added all the things that I would ordinarily have. I cut some out of the other things. I have this script though. And let me just back up. I'm sorry. Okay, so I've got the script, create a sample form. Let's go ahead and create a form so you can really understand what I was talking about. And so you just press this button, and it'll say running function. And eventually, it should finish. And if there's a problem, you'll just see a big red thing. It'll say, "Oh, I got a problem at line 19." So it's really nice. It'll tell you what the problem is. And you can walk and say, "Oh, I left out a semicolon," or did something silly. Usually, it doesn't take this long. Google must be tired. Oh, okay, here we go. And so now I was telling you before how we go to the logger and see that information. So if we go here to view logs, this is how you can get information back to yourself. So if you're trying to write your scripts and you're trying to figure out, is my variable really making sense? Am I really activating the right thing? You can write little messages to yourself to say, okay, I think this variable should turn out to be 10, but you can put it out here so you can kind of see if that's actually the case. So here I've got, this will give me messages from the last time I ran the script. So here's the URL of the form. This URL is the form. Here's the spreadsheet. And so let's go to that spreadsheet. Well, let's go to the form first. Copy it. Okay, so here's the form. Really looks like a lot like the other one I showed you before. Same script. And the other thing I thought was kind of funny when I was first doing this, the form wouldn't look like I wanted it to, so I kept editing the form. And I kept expecting that the same form that I first created would change. Actually, I was creating a new form every time, so I had like 20 forms. You all knew that. You're like, of course. Okay, so here's my form. And here's the URL that goes to the spreadsheet that attaches to the form. So we know every form, as soon as you tell it to give me a spreadsheet that goes with that form, we get a spreadsheet. Okay, so here is my prepare request responses. Nobody's filled out the form yet. It's been up there for minutes. Let's see. So here is where we have to add a script. So I told you that the scripts were container bound or they were standalone. Like they're standalone, I can see them in my Google Drive. And then this is a script that will be container bound. So if I go to Tools, Script Editor, it should tell me that here I can create a script. I'll just say project. So this is where I could create that script as the tools form. Let's call it okay. And so now I have to put all my code in there to capture all that information. Before we do actually show you the code, let's go back to the presentation. Okay. So we already saw that script editor. And so this is to kind of give you an idea of what the code actually does. So the really important thing is the function on form submit is that the e.values, that's critical. You can figure that out and be able to get all that information out of your Google spreadsheet and do whatever you want. So I created a variable called my responses, and set it equal to e.values. And so now I can create other variables and set it to all the pieces in the array that correspond to that. So in other words, my responses is an array, and this is a zero-based array. And so what it corresponds to, here's my spreadsheet down here. Here is array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So if I want to get the username, I will need my responses 1, because that's the one column. And if I wanted the equipment type, then that's my responses 2. That's the third item in the array. And short description is 7. You can't see it because my screen isn't big. You have to capture that much, but you get the idea. As you have this array that has all your responses to the last person. So you can set a variable to any of those pieces of information that you want, and then you can send an email back containing all that information. So that's how I got that email in the request systems training was broken, because I said set equipment type, response type 2, just all the way down the line. Then I have all those variables, and now I can create a message, something like this, that says, this is the message that will send the user, which is our user response 1, who has reported that equipment type, creating equipment type equals to whatever's in this column 2, isn't working. And then the other thing that Google gives you is the ability to send mail. So there's the mail app.send, and here you can set up, here's the email, that's me, I'm going to send it to myself. I'm going to pretend, oh yes, this is the subject line, it's new repair request. You want the message, I can create my message all along the way by adding those messages and variables together. And this is who I'm pretending it's coming from, the repair request notification system, and I can see the supervisor. So does that sort of make sense to people? Like that's critical. If you can get that E dot values, then you've got all that information from the Google form. As far as that's so important. So let's see. Let me go back. So. All right, so I will go. And you don't have to qualify function. So basically, this is the big long thing that will get that information from the Google Sheet and send it in your email. On form submit here, I'm just setting all these variables like we told you, and then I'm doing some if and then because I have different categories for what the equipment is in, and we have 3 different groups of people, so I'm going to alert one group depending on what category the equipment is in, which is really here nor there with Google Abstract. It's just something work for us, and I can create this message and just send it. Okay, once you see this red star, that means you haven't saved it yet, so you can save it. This icon. And you know, before when we created a script, here we press the run button for it to run. Now, you know, if we run this, okay, so this is good. All right, so the first thing will come up is these authorizations are wrong because if you have Google Apps Script, it's going to be messing with your forms and your scripts, and so Google, you know, at this point thinks, well, let's ask for permission. Lots of times we don't. Okay, let's go. So you say. And then it'll still ask you don't load it. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting this error because really it doesn't make sense to run this from the script. We have to set up a trigger to have it run. Jeff's shaking his head. You can explain this. So if I go back here, so we have to set up a trigger. Basically, there's you have to create the script that you want to run, and it's bound to the Google Sheet, but that's not good enough. We have to like tell them when we want to run this thing. You just can't run it, whatever. So to set up a trigger, you do that from within your script. And when I was first learning this, I was reading all these things on Google, and I went around in circles, and it was really hard for me to figure it out. And you know, I thought I figured it out, and then you know, things on Google changed a little bit. I thought I figured it out, and they changed it. I realized, oh no, it's actually on the script. Because there's so many different places you have to go to find this stuff, and it doesn't really necessarily make sense at first. So you set up your trigger from your script. So if we go to resources, it says current project triggers, and we'll say, oh, no triggers are set up. Oh, that's the problem. Click here to set one now. Go to the next slide. And this is sort of what you'll see. And so it'll say run on form submit. That's what we call our functions, and that's what's going to run. And the event is from a spreadsheet. And on form submit. So when somebody submits the form, you're thinking about it. Okay. So go back to our script. Let's see if we can do that. Sources, current project triggers, none. Okay, let's save it. Up. On form submit, time driven, well, that would be like every 12 hours. So let's make it to a spreadsheet. And not when it's opening or editing, but when we submit it. Save. Needs authorization. So now if we go to this repair request that is associated with this form, let's see if we can go to, rather than use the, let's go to the form. Let's see if we get an email. The projection system, let's see. So here's that confirmation that you're creating a language request. And now I go to the email. I got a new repair request. Woo! And so did a few other people that were going to consider the saying, what? Anyway. Isn't that amazing? So back. So you can see now. And so to get a little more complicated, which I don't think we'll actually do right now, is you can send an email when the form is updated. And you can also read the data from the Google Sheets. So the interesting thing is that, you know, your regular Google Sheets, Google spreadsheet, you ever go on the bottom and click plus, then you get Word Sheets. Well, you can use those sheets that, say if you set up a variable and call your spreadsheet, it's called SS. It's a nice name if you remember. So SS0 will be that first sheet that you automatically get. And if you create a second sheet, that would be SS1. So you can do things like, you know, gather responses and for some reason put it on the second sheet, add these together, and you can like do whatever you can imagine because you can read information from the spreadsheet and you can write it somewhere else. So one thing that you use is, oops, okay, it's a range that is equal to e.source.getActiveRange. So that's like what's going on here, and then you set up a row to the variable equals to row. You get row in the range, and then you can, using that information, you can get set up an array of all the information in those rows and columns, and then so you get the information out, and then you can write the information off. But what's a little bit different about looking at the spreadsheet, you know, earlier before I showed you when you're submitting a form, you know, 0 is column 1, and 1 is actually column 2. If you're working with these data cells in the spreadsheet, actually then column 1 is now 1. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And that's where that logger comes in, and where you're just to make sure is that 1 or 2, you kind of see what information you get back. Show me what into is. So I don't think I'll bother going into the code for that. If anybody has questions, we'd be happy to share it with you. I think I can see people are like another piece of pizza. So that's pretty much okay. So yeah, if you're still interested and you want to learn more, you can go to the Google site. They have a developer site, and they have all the documentation for all the classes for spreadsheets and forms. What I've experienced from looking at it is the most helpful stuff is the forms and spreadsheets. That's stuff that would be what I want to do. So I read about Google sites and widgets, and I get experimented, and then I just realize that, oh, it's adding a little calendar. It's not really what I want to do. I want to create a site and embed forms seamlessly. So that's pretty much that. Basically, I got into this because we had people people that were creating assessments that they wanted them scored, and so I figured out how to do it in Google. So you can score things and kind of create tests this way. But I also realized after that Alteryx works a little bit as far as just scoring things. So I mean, Google, unless you have some complicated JavaScript thing, Google will allow you to do that. Alteryx. You're interested in script.
I'm way out of my comfort zone in this stuff, and I'm just curious if you, when you started out, were you copying a sample script and then altering it, or were you coming up with this from scratch on your own and just hoping it worked? How you
Well, originally we were gathering, we had all these student responses on Google Sheets, and so I was using PHP to import into a database and then that became really cumbersome. Like I needed a way to do it automatically, so when somebody fills out the form, I don't have to go through this process. It's okay for one class or two classes, but not you're gonna have 37 classes. So basically, I sort of like out of desperation. And I kept reading things that didn't really at first make any sense to me at all, because it just kept going in circles. I would click through the documentation and keep clicking through, and I wind up at the first question that I had. So I found it really hard to get a hold into it. So to me, like knowing where to find Google scripts, like that's worth 3 days of information. And knowing that about container bounds and where to attach the script, that's another 2 days. So it's really hard just to get that basic thing. They do have a tutorial on the first page that's sort of like how you can have a registration form, people sign up for lunch, and then they go through it. But I looked at that and thought, that doesn't really suit my needs. I just kept reading it until it finally made sense. Like I was reading about how you can create a form that made no sense to me. I don't like all them off. And then once it starts to make sense, then when you read the documentation makes a lot more sense. At first it doesn't make any sense. It's just more stuff that doesn't make sense. I don't know if that helps.
One comment I could say about it is if you plan to use this long-term for a department, it might be beneficial to have the departmental account with the Google account to create the form, because that email will be sent from your address for its life.
Right. So this is okay because I'm the technical coordinator at the Language Center for the repair requests. So the other things that we're using to send scores back to students, we have a departmental account that we use. And so I will write the script as me, and then I'll send it over to that account. And the other thing, there is some limit to how much data you can collect. It's pretty darn huge, but a whole lot. But there is an ultimate where the spreadsheets circulate. So if you are really going to have something you want to use a lot, I can't recommend this. But in our case, where we need, we want to develop something, we don't have, we can't get a hold of the developers yet, or the developer had it ready for us in 3 months, but we need to get the test next week. It's like something that you can do.
Sorry, I was just curious if anyone else.
So I actually wrote some for some other CLA departments. When I still working in CLA, there was a lot of forms where the person that wanted to be notified wasn't savvy enough to have the results spreadsheet shared with them and then have notification. So what we were doing was really just making sure that A, they were, and then B, it would go to the people that we identified without them having to set it up themselves. So, but it was pretty basic stuff, like just collecting information about interest in being interested advisors. And nothing that tested.
That's another thing we're using for them. Testing has this website, and they wanted students to write to them with complaints, but they wanted to have a form so they could write questions. But I didn't want to have to set up a form or validate it or whatever. So, but using this Google form, and I just how to create an email. And so they got their email with the information formatted the way we wanted to. And at some point when they really set up their own site with the developers.
When you said form, is there a way to control?
Well, yeah, so when you have set, you collect email as true, then it's, then you have to authenticate with this web. Or, you know, if you're creating the form, you can do it as you do it in the GUI, you know, where you just say, let anybody have access or restricted. So you can do it that way too, however way, whatever. Are you saying you want to limit it to like 5 or 6 people or a certain
Well,
number?
I was just wondering, no, I was just wondering how we go out of control.
Well, if you collect their email, you have to authenticate as a University of Minnesota person. And then they have to find the form too. That's going to take about this long.
You have the top of your script. The little thing that says, if username is this person, that person, the other person, or if the username comes from this other spreadsheet, spreadsheet or something, then allow them, otherwise send them back message and say, go away. On the Google project, we had forms that email responses for just basically up to the beginning of that feature. Opting to be like early testers of Google, and we put up information you need out of the first they're really useful. I mean, one good example out there for just getting started, it's not what we're looking at, but it's complicated with the calendar. The one with just how to do away like a mail merge, easy enough one to get started on. Kind of like this, where but instead you had like the template script, they had the template come from another page in spreadsheet, and certain fields had certain words, tag, square brackets, and then just subbed out what was in square brackets for like responses. So it'd be easy to have one person change the template and not have them be able to mess up the script.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I'm sorry if I missed this, but is the syntax of writing the script, is it more or less the same as writing JavaScript?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, you know, I was reading a lab script and I was trying to figure out how to do something, and then I realized, oh, that's just JavaScript. It's not documented by Google because no, it's just regular JavaScript. So,
Okay, cool. And then, so you use it a lot for spreadsheets, but can it create other types of documents, like just a doc? Like if you have a form that has a lot of sort of longer answers, could it just put it into a Google document?
yes, I didn't know that.
It's probably possible.
There's even a connection for company Twilio. You have like phone calls.
Wow.
Wow.
But your prescription is ready. Such opposite working.
Let the mobile calls begin.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to get into the CPT development. I mean, for me, just having those emails that tell me what's actually wrong and not just wow, and then I can tell when it's fixed. I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. And so since you got to work with the tech, and he mostly fixes things, so I don't even have to look at that Google sheet to see what's going on. I can tell what's happening.
The menus,
Yeah.
a little bit specific across the is if you could have the form answers that you have, and then a couple, maybe 3 columns of like status, progress of this request, and seeing people have the menu that they have that lets different people who are responsible for parts of the request go and click to say that they've finished their part of that request. And then you can do a things, emails, for everything. First are in one box, it's this request you're working on. Undefined part, whatever it is, and it do what it's going to do, and then we jump. Send it to the next person, then they have to come in. So you kind of do a workflow with that, just a workflow.
Well, since we have a small team, I just added 2 columns. We have one column where we can write the notes, what we did, and then the next column, you don't put an X or anything in there, it all makes sense. That's sort of like saying we're. Computers telling me that's it. But, you know, I'm Diane R., UMN, if you have any questions. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's really nice. I feel like I earned my pizza.
Thank you.